So, have you got any more songs you're working on right now, or have you got them all done?
I got 12 of them now.
Yeah, because you sent me like the first batch.
Yeah, I've actually just listened. I just did cranked through 6 more mixes last night on 6 different songs, and I was listening to them quick in the car. So I got to send them off to Kev here for a double check, but they're getting pretty close now. So
I want to get some of those samples for the Remy Show and Remy Reacts.
Yeah.
We can use his music. I was talking to him about it at dinner.
That'd be dope.
I was like, we could cross-collaborate that way, right? Like, because
synergy.
He's got a... Well, the stuff that he's making has I think, more of the style of music that I would like anyway.
Agreed.
Not completely, but
yeah,
close.
I mean, it's a touch of... It's not exact, like, full-bore, like, symphonic, like, European metal. It's kind of a mix of... I don't
It's
know.
closer than what we got right now. We have pretty generic kind of... It's
Yeah.
not bad,
Yeah.
but it's
my
like...
riff rock.
It's basically
Yeah.
your generic metal, right?
Yeah.
Like think if you played like a random soundbite of metal,
Yeah.
that's it.
Which I'm happy about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I can mix it,
really
Does the
fits.
job. Does the job, right?
Yeah. Straight down the pipe.
Yeah. It's got no real aggressive standpoint, you know. It's just,
No.
this is it.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, well...
definitely use some more personality to it.
Well, I'll send you the other stuff that I got, because it's getting fairly close now. It shouldn't be too much longer before it's
just like
actually
over
done.
at the computer panicking.
Yeah.
What is it doing now?
God, I just hate technology so much. I mean, I love it because we can do this, but it stresses me out.
Oh, dude, I mean, like, you guys were talking about the problems you were having with yourself. My recording rig was literally crashing. If I was to, like, load a track, duplicate a track, load a preset, I was mixing my songs this way. So basically the thing was like dying every time I would do anything other than like move a fader or adjust a knob, and it would just crash it all till I figured out, like, finally got the right updates for it. But yeah, it's a pain in the ass to say
It really
the least.
It really is.
What I've noticed is a lot of the new music that I'm listening to now on Spotify is all like you think of it. You think when you hear it, oh, this is a band. No, it's just one dude.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's mostly that now.
And you can see it's one dude because they're putting out albums every like 9 months.
Yeah.
Like it's fast.
That's
and
the
it's
whole idea.
quality too.
So I had this theory about this because, like, you came up in bands, and I don't know if you had the same experience, but like, there's always like when you're in a band, there's like four or five people in the band, and there's usually like one techie guy that's kind of like the driving force, the songwriter, and then they'll end up having to demo themselves and things like that. And I think like as the band dissolves because that dude's doing everything and nobody else is helping him.
They're just showing up.
Yeah, and
Every
then
now and then.
Eventually, like sometimes a bunch of those dudes find each other, and then they make a band, and that band's successful. And then there's also some guys who just let go of the idea of a band and then just do it all themselves.
I would think you get too many of those guys, and it's like you got too many leaders.
Cooks in the
Too
kitchen.
many cooks in the kitchen.
No,
Yeah.
man. No, man.
They
If they're
clash.
good, I'd be nope, 100%. Because then they can take care of their own shit.
It depends. It depends on what it is, because I've definitely been the guy to do everything, which I am now, because
Yes.
it's almost just a one-man operation. But I've been in bands where there are like a couple of guys. But the problem I've found before is if you have one person with a really strong vision of what they're looking for, and then you have to... Sometimes it works to add somebody else's opinion to that, and sometimes it just... It's like pouring too much salt in the soup, you know what I mean? Like,
Are those people really good, though? Like, that's the only thing that I've noticed is, like, sometimes when you have a really strong ego person, they're like the quality of what they're going to put out is not going to be the highest. So I still think there's that like one guy who can put out like the higher quality. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think like a band of those I think would be dope.
I mean, if you could, I think it's hard to find. It's hard to find. A lot of times it seems to be like certain types of musicians that fall into that.
Yeah, agreed.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I've ever come... it's horrible to say, but I don't know if I've ever come across a bass player that's like a hardcore tech guy.
Yeah, I mean, they were
Like,
usually
not
a
very
guitar
many.
player before then.
It's usually it's
What
usually a
instrument
guitar
you play
player that's
says
doing
about
it.
your personality.
It says a lot.
Yeah.
Usually. I mean, guitar players, 90% of the time, they're the driving force. But I mean, I've met a bunch of drummers that are techie like that.
Sometimes the drummers, but usually it's guitar players, so it's hard to put a band together of...
Yeah, just guitar players?
Right?
I mean,
Standalone singers often never
no.
have any...
They just stand there.
like
Half the
they
time.
don't know the
ins and outs of anything.
yeah, not usually, right?
No. It's odd. Like a standalone singer, like if it's usually like they would have to be a guitar player or something as well.
Yeah, yeah.
It's rare to find someone that is like nerdy about tech
it's
stuff.
Yeah.
just about being the personality too, though, right? You got to
Yeah.
be more of the face of the thing.
Yeah, and like the techie people like behind the scene, like you have an interest in the
yeah.
behind the scenes stuff. So I think it would be like you'd be less driven to be like, hey, everyone look at me.
Well,
I would argue that that's a more sustainable way to operate anyway, because the face is going to get old.
I mean, yes and no. I'm coming to the realization that in today's day and age, you have to be all of it if you want success. I mean, I've been a behind the scenes guy now for a lot of years and got really comfortable with that, but I have to figure this out and eventually get to where I'm putting myself front and center all the time, like, because who else is going to be that for me?
No one.
Right? I mean,
Unless you're doing something for them.
well, yeah, but I mean, even still, like nobody's gonna push my thing the way I'm gonna push my
No,
thing.
as I always
right?
say, no one gives as much a shit about you as you.
Well, nobody ever does about any of your endeavors, right? And I think this is the problem that you run into with bands and with other group collaborations is you forget that your dream isn't somebody else's dream, and nobody else is going to have the same amount of passion for your dream that you do, and
If
vice
they do,
versa.
that's strange. Or if they do, that's also their dream.
No,
Well,
find
I mean,
whenever-
yeah.
Like, whenever I'm asking anyone for anything, I'm always like, they don't care about this as much as I do. They don't have anything invested in this. If they say no, fair enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you get so absorbed into what you're doing, it's like, oh, wait, I'm the one that's profiting from this.
Yeah.
No one else is.
Yeah, and there's almost a certain level of comfort I took once I came to that realization that it's not that people don't care or that they're
No, it's not that
it's
at
just
all.
it is what it is, and
Much
once you
less
accept
malevolent than that.
yeah once you accept that everybody's so wrapped up in their own shit, it's like anything else. I mean, it all boils back down to basic psychology.
Yeah, exactly.
In the end, right? Which is oddly enough where this whole it started. I just wanted to write songs and be able to find a way to live off of writing songs and making music, and now I've like gone like so far down the psychology rabbit hole that it's like I've had somebody tell me, well, why don't you just start getting an online degree in this? Like you're really getting into it. It's like, but you have to, because I mean, to get your art out there, you now have to become you have to be a full-on entrepreneur. You have to be a small business owner. You have to be a marketer. The marketing leads you into like, well, okay, how do you market to people? You got to understand what drives people, what motivates people, how to get what you want out of them for the most negative term you could probably use is manipulation.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. That's what
Sales.
Advertising is at its core.
Manipulation gets a bad rap.
Yeah, it does.
Well, it does.
It
I
does.
mean,
I think people use it wrong, but
it's all in the context of what you're. I mean, if you're trying to manipulate somebody for some malevolent means, yes, of course, that's inherently negative. But if you're trying to, manipulate someone to eat better or exercise, I mean, sure, you're manipulating them, I guess, but it is for their benefit, I suppose. In the end, it's coming from a place of positivity. It's not.
I don't know. Dietary stuff is strange.
Well, I mean, I'm using that as an example,
no,
right?
it's a great it should be a great example, but these days it's more nice to say, go ahead, have another burger. You had a long day, than it is to go,
well, that's
maybe
the easy
you've
thing.
had too many burgers.
It's
You know what I mean? Like, even though I have this whole thing I'm working on right now, being nice versus being kind.
Yeah.
I'm really pulling this apart. I've been thinking about it for weeks, because the kind thing to do would go, you've had too many burgers and that's contributing to your misery. But that's not nice. What's nice is to say, eat more burgers. You've had a long day.
is that
It is, because
stretch out the time though? Stretch out the time, like
but
in the
that's what I
immediate.
mean. Nice is fickle. Nice is like, oh, I'm just friendly. I'm friendly, so I'm going to tell you what you want to hear, not what you need to hear. What you need to hear is often more kind.
Yeah,
well,
of
I don't.
course.
I don't know. I think sometimes you need to hear things that aren't kind or nice. Though.
Oh, I hear
think.
ya.
I think the term. I get what you're saying. I just think the term you're using is.
I would
the two are
approach-
very, very close together.
I think the tone can change and it can still be kind.
Well, I would
You know what I mean?
approach
Like
it,
being
kindness
harsh on someone
as
is potentially the language they need to hear at
Well,
the time,
you can
which
be
is a kind
harsh,
thing.
but without being. I mean, you can give somebody like harsh.
but if it's for the greater good, I'd argue that's kindness.
I mean, I guess we're kind of maybe splitting hairs here, but like you can be
That's all
harsh.
I've been doing on
Yeah.
this.
You can be harsh
That's all
without.
I do is hair split.
But no, you can be harsh without being unkind per se. It's just more matter of fact, and sometimes that's more of how somebody takes what you're saying and what they're used to being given. If you're the type of person that's always being, handled with kid gloves, you're being soft soaped all the time, and you're not used to hearing like matter of fact, like no, blah blah blah, this is how it is, then you might take that in a way that seems to be unkind or harsh when it's not meant that way.
But I don't think you're taking the kind. I think you're taking the nice. Then,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like the phrasing, the words and their meaning, like nice is tonal,
Yeah, so
tonal and emotion.
a perfect way that I would put this is if you have a guy at work that's like, oh, he's super friendly to everyone, but he's stealing from the place.
Yeah,
But he's
Yeah.
such a nice guy,
Yeah.
though. Oh, it's such a shame. He was such a nice guy.
Yeah.
It's like, no, he wasn't. He was an asshole.
Yeah.
He was an asshole.
He was unkind.
He was unkind.
Yeah, weird,
yeah,
right? He was unkind to the business, no matter how
But
nice he was.
had a nice way of talking to people. Where I often tend to be the exact opposite, where I'm often operating for the right reasons, but I'm very vicious with people. I'm very raw with people. I don't hold back. I just say shit, and it's not what they want to hear. But it's
but-
always for the right reason.
That's a thing though. Like always what they want to hear. Like, man, if we always get what we want to hear,
I've
that's
never
not
been
good.
good at kid gloving things, even when it's
Even with
if it was
kids.
going to get my even if I was going to get my ass kicked for it.
Yeah.
I would just put it out there and get knocked out instead.
Yeah, I mean, I think I see what you're saying, and I
Raise you.
Well, no, I think some of that is just the fact that you, the type of job you have to do and the things you get conditioned to it. And I speak from experience on this part of it. I have been conditioned not to speak my mind to the average person.
Oh, dude, I'm having to
service.
learn it. I'm having to relearn it.
Yeah,
It's really weird.
I've been like purposefully like, I mean, I can't do it at work with customers per se, but anybody else now, I'm really trying not to just push down what I actually think and what I like, what's really on my mind, because
That the Earth is flat.
well, yeah, exactly, yeah,
Oh
exactly.
God! Thank
That's
God
right.
Scott isn't here right now. This whole podcast would be derailed for a half an hour now.
Yep. Sorry.
Is he one of those? Really?
I almost.
No.
No, he's very anti.
Oh, okay. Well,
He's
Okay,
very
good.
against it.
Yeah.
well, it's
Quite anti.
He
fucking
kept
ridiculous.
transitioning
Yes, it
back
is,
to
but
it.
like it's fun
absurd,
at the same
but
time.
Yeah, I guess it's amusing, but
Yeah.
it's,
Badminton's
Yeah, that's
ridiculous.
what I said.
so-
I just giggled and move on, but he couldn't
Yeah.
get past it.
Yep.
but
Go on.
But no, I think like there's a certain amount of social conditioning that you get in depending on how you have to make your money, I guess, to
Yeah,
some
sure.
degree, right? And the types of people you're around. Now, I mean, I'm learning you don't have to be
Nice.
so you don't always have to capitulate, and you don't always have to but sometimes you do, and you just have to grin and bear it. And
You know, like, cause I mean, I was in the same job as you, and I think one of the things that I've realized being out of it more is that when you take a mentality, you nurture the type of business that will get you more of that mentality. I don't want to say full law of attraction, but it's pretty damn close. Just in that, like, when you have the customers right always mindset, you will get that type of person.
oh, and you do.
Yeah, it's like with
100%.
Walmart going for the cheapest shit. It's
Yeah.
like, guess what? You're going to get everybody who wants the cheapest shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, now
And-
you have the cheapest customer.
Yeah.
Like we breed horrible. Some people turn into horrible customers based on like the way that, like there is no. They're almost never wrong.
Yeah,
even
of
when
course.
they're completely
When
wrong.
they're completely wrong.
Yeah.
And like that begets more of that behavior.
Oh, exactly. It's
But,
a
like,
spoiled child syndrome, right?
The thing that I get
spoiling
curious
the kid.
about is like,
Well, I
if
see
as
that all
a
the time at my work.
if as a business or as a society we could just let go of that person, because like percentage wise, how many percentage points do you think that person is out of the customer base that you have?
Quite a few. That makes up a lot of what comes in where I work.
Okay, well, yours is a whole different thing. Like the whole restaurant industry is screwed for that, in my opinion. I can't believe the way that we treat people who give us food.
Oh yeah, like it's horrific.
Yeah, it's atrocious,
like, flat out insane too.
Yeah.
Like I was chewing. Like we had a guy on the weekend who wanted well done bacon. His bacon was literally burnt when it went out, and he complained that it was chewy. He was still chewing it an hour later. It's like it's not even in the realm of reality at that point.
Yeah,
and he was so angry.
Yeah, I mean, I have things sort of like that. I mean, different,
How
obviously.
do you respond to someone who's flat out lying to you fervently, and you're at fault?
Well,
please don't come back.
At my job, it's you take it and try to make them happy as best you can, so that you can get that repeat business and keep seeing those dollars go through.
Okay, so let me argue a larger point.
You're having a bad day, sir. Maybe go have a nap.
Let me argue a larger point then. So say you remove that guy. The famine mindset would say we're losing money, right? That's the immediate. That's the reactionary thing of just like, oh shit, a customer is gone. That's no longer profit, whatever the minor amount of profit that one guy gets you in that one day. So say that as a mentality frees up one of your wait staff's life in a little bit to make them feel better about their day because they didn't have to engage with someone that had that mentality. So they give a little bit better service to the rest of their tables. And then all of a sudden it fosters an environment of positivity that more people will hear about and get drawn towards, simply because we don't take shit here, because we value the way that our business feels.
So you think people are happier, you get happier people coming in?
I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, and that might make sense, but that's a long-term
it's a long goal.
And that's not what anybody in our society looks at. That's
not in the restaurant industry. We're a cash flow business.
Yeah.
If you're not making money now, you're pretty well done.
Yeah. I mean, if this whole thing is proved as anything, it's like there's a lot of businesses, and I think a lot of those businesses are the ones that are hanging on to that, like that guy who's going to complain about the bacon, and he's just going to do it every single time, and he's going to try and get free food.
See what he can get away with.
And it's going to ruin the day of whoever is encountering him. And they're going to be bummed the next table that they go to, and that person's going to get worse service, and the whole thing is just going to fucking.
I mean, you're not wrong, but at the same time, the idea that I think where the person who's not on the front line but reaping the financial benefits of the customers, i.e., the employer or the owner, they're not looking at it like that so much, because we have never looked at.
I know.
We you know it's
how much suffering goes into the product.
Yeah, I mean we saw this with the whole pandemic and everything. Frontline workers and blah blah blah. Essential service, this and that, and it's like at the end of the day, will you pay them anymore? No. Will you give them any other benefits? No. No, nothing. No, you're essential when we need you, and then
I'll make some posts about it
afterwards.
Yeah, I'll make some posts about it, and then talk shit about you.
And
we'll put up one of those pretty banners on Facebook.
Yeah.
The idea is that you're paying someone to do a job, and we're starting to see a shift in like the mindset of the worker now, but and in the relationship between the worker and the employer, but the employee and the employer. But for so many generations, it's been the idea that it's not indentured servitude by any stretch, but it's you've agreed that you're going to trade your time for this amount of money, and the idea is that you will do whatever you're asked within the legal constraints that are put on you from and I mean, depending on the time, the area you live in, that could be as little as, kids can only work, an 8-year-old can only work 14 hours at the mill, before you got to give them a break, or, to more where we're at today, where, standard 8-hour day, child labor laws, yada, yada, yada. It's still not perfect, but it's better than it was. But the idea is that you're there to do a job, and by God, you'll just do whatever you're told, or else you will be replaced, right? Like you're disposed, like you're just there to fill a spot. Like you're not an integral, a gear is a gear, right? The gear, one of the teeth breaks off the gear, you take the gear out, you throw it out, and you put a new gear in, and you don't think about the old gear anymore. It's starting to be more of, and you're seeing this definitely down in the States right now, where there's a big labor shortage. And people are not willing to go back to certain jobs in certain sectors, and it's really confusing the hell.
We're having a hell of a time getting people into the kitchen.
Well,
We've had 3 people apply in the last 3 months. And we hired one of them.
It's the type of job
and
that
the guy he's on drugs of some kind.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind. And he's so slow he can't do anything.
But here's the thing, right?
He's there every day.
Oh, that's good.
But this is the thing. What do these jobs pay? Right?
Not good.
Not great. So what type of person is going to end up doing that job? Right?
They've never paid great necessarily, and I've gone on record there. Even I've said to them, if you were to hire me at what you hired this guy at, I would not take this job.
Yeah.
I get paid well, but I wouldn't work for minimum wage in that place. No fucking way.
I mean, I think this is the thing, right? Like, in the long run, you're better to hire somebody who's going to be better at the job and pay them a little more, so that they're going to have some vested interest in actually doing a good job and being there long term. And the idea of somebody who's well trained, and knows their job is going to be able to do things more efficiently and get more done, rather than a rotating group of people that are always new and always learning. But again, we don't look at it that way, because it's just how much can you get right now and how fast can you get it. There's no real concern in our society for the long term.
They operate off of the idea of, we got to own a few people, and then the rest are interchangeable. You give a few people more, and abuse the fuck out of them until eventually they don't do it anymore. And then I don't know what they do. Like, I don't know where that goes after, because we're not breeding anyone new.
We don't worry about that. We, even at the highest, I mean, this is the thing, right? Like, we're talking about this, wondering, oh, well, why doesn't this person, like this individual, that individual, get this whole idea of, planning for the long term and making, investments in like good quality people.
Where do you see that around you?
But this is what I'm getting at is, we don't do that at the federal level governmentally. We don't do, like, as even more macroscopically as Western society. We don't plan ahead more than about 2 years with, essentially an election cycle.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, you're seeing it shorter than that.
Well, even shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. But traditionally, it's basically an election cycle. What gets me to the next one?
Think about the globe.
That's all we worry about.
Think about the globe and cars. Like a year, and now all of a sudden there's no new cars.
Yeah.
Because of one thing that we decided to put in one place.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it will always be this. Therefore, this is how we run our world.
Well, this is the whole problem with shipping right now.
Yeah.
Right? Transport and shipping. We've moved most manufacturing to, like you said, one area of the world where it was cheap to produce and cheap to get stuff out of. Now that's changing. And what you're finding is, if there's any disruption to that, all of a sudden the entire world gets knocked to its knees, essentially, because you've put all your eggs in one basket. It's
and not as many eggs as we thought.
No.
Well, I mean, it's the idea of, like, it's almost oddly enough through it started with the NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, and all of this, but through this this idea of hyper-capitalism, we've almost come around to what would look on paper, say 50 years ago, to be almost like a communist style ideal, where you centralize everything, right? You have one, like the government looks after all the, like that was the big thing with in the Soviet Union and then communist China originally. They started food production instead of having it be every area produce their own. Well, you can produce that food. We're going to gather up that food. centralize it, and then redistribute it afterwards from that one centralized location. And it ran into serious problems because if there's any
roundabout
issue
approach to it.
yeah, if there's any issue with that one spot where, say, the food is coming out, like the supply lines, the whatever, then you got massive problems. So we always looked at like this decentralization thing of, you know, everybody was, for the longest time, countries were trying to be self-sufficient and be able to look after themselves.
But they want the lowest price. So
they want the well, again, like I said, we've done this weird thing where through, this, like I said, capitalism going to
capitalism
its end stages
basically led to communism.
Has led it, well,
yeah.
Communism in the distribution.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Not communism in how
not socially.
But I think that comes from the
socially,
same thing, right? Like, because when it was communism, like how they would approach it is like, since it's all run through a government entity, the idea is the government entity is wanting to be as efficient as possible, and therefore, like, anytime we talk about money and efficiencies and things like that, it's always like your cost lower. That's like the only answer there is, right? Like, it's just like cost lower, better. And the irony is, like, as costs get lower, they're still raising prices, which is even more crazy. But like that mentality.
Man.
Well, but it's
money.
communism as
But
well,
we
right?
yeah.
Because it's like, we have this finite resource of our country is sending all of its resource
you're
to
describing
communism.
The
we have to
disappearing middle class right now, right?
sort of, yeah.
Right? We're getting more for it, and we're paying less for it. That's the idea. The top is buying this for less and getting more for it.
Yes, they're getting more return.
And therefore, the middle is getting more and more separate.
But this is like, that's where I'm it's interesting that it's like, it doesn't seem to matter the system, our drive to make cost less and consider it efficiency, and, like, you know what I mean, kind of like magic it, make it like so, not to take it to a weird place, but like, so say the idea of like medical system. So like, you could make it so that if somebody comes in and they have some sort of a thing, like, I'll just pick on it because it's like close to me, but like, say you have I'm sad, I'm depressed, I'm okay, you're depressed, here's a pill.
Yeah.
Right. That is to reduce cost, because ideally you would look at this person as an individual and you would go, okay, we're going to do a bunch of tests. We're going to see why you're this way, to see if the thing that we're going to give you is the right answer, right?
Yeah, well, they've saved some steps already. Right?
Yeah, but the cost would be astronomical. So to mitigate cost, you can't do any of that.
But I would argue that has more to do with the time too, which is another cost, right?
Well, that's
Who has
all that
the
it is.
Time?
Well, we all do.
For one
it's just that we
person.
decide to not.
But like from their standpoint, what do they got to deal with 30 of you same day?
Of course they do. That's their task.
But then they're
as
going,
the government.
Efficiency says, I don't want to be spending too long on Kevin. I got 15 more Kevins to go today. Fuck that guy. So then they speed the process up.
Yeah, and but this is again like this
Doesn't mean
in the
you
name
get a
of
better
efficiency.
deal.
Why is efficiency like? And I can't quite tell if it's just like we're afraid of death, so time
That's
is
exactly
insanely
it.
valuable, and
I think
therefore efficiency is like paramount.
Efficiency is more about our short lifespan than it is about our small wallets. Or
Do you think that comes from like from the top down then too? It's like I have to make the most profit because I'm going to die.
It's all a race.
I mean,
Jeez,
to some
sucks.
degree. I mean, like what you guys are talking about, though. I think like the idea of efficient, like at least in this like example of like the medical system, when you're talking about efficiency and what you're really, I think it's a whole different reason and rationale as to why people are doing, like, why our system is the way it is. It's not people are looking for just a quick way to get it done. It's because it is. The motivation is profit. It's not actually healing, right? So if the motivation was healing, it wouldn't be an issue of, okay, what's the quickest, what's the cheapest, what's the whatever. It would be a matter
detour
of
into psychedelics here.
I mean, yeah, obviously,
Right, so
'Cause
I mean-
that'll change all of that shit.
well, but you see what I'm saying, though, right? Like
if they can
again,
make money
it's-
on it.
No, I think like once psychedelics come into the fray, I don't think we see the world the same. I don't think there's any avoiding it.
Yes and no. I think it's a big boat, and it's going to be hard to turn it around, and it's going to take a lot longer.
Yeah.
than-
I think it's a weird tipping point. Like, I think it's one of those things where it's just like, if you get people, especially like, so Canada will be a very interesting little case study on it, in my opinion. So like, say you just get people on the gray market level where it's just more normal to microdose. Just like, hey, it's just more normal. Then all of a sudden, weirdly, our pill costs start going down. Our whole medical system starts making less money because we are just sporadically taking less of these things because we're observing our own behaviors in a different way. And then all of a sudden, Canada starts to...
Wildly optimistic.
It's potential, right? Like, it's one of those things where it's just like you kind of see it with when weed became legal. It's just like this... people that would never entertain it start entertaining it. And then that changes how people approach their pain management. Like, if all of a sudden you get into weed and all of a sudden that helps you in a way that other pharmaceuticals don't, that's going to hit the way that we buy Tylenol. And that's going to have a ripple effect out, right? So I'm just saying that, like, when you do something like that and it just slowly works its way into the kind of nomenclature of the world, just everybody can, oh yeah, you're also on that, becomes more normalized, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, the only reason I'm saying this...
behind Tylenol just get behind the other thing.
Yeah, and...
Well, they might, or...
Well,
there's
just
another thing that has happened demonstrably through history here that I think you're neglecting.
The war on drugs?
No. Drugs aside, like any industry. I mean, it's the whole like Tesla Edison thing. If you build a better mousetrap and you haven't found a way to properly monetize it, or allow people that are in positions of power currently to monetize it effectively, expect it to disappear.
Well, okay, so there's going to be a way of this becoming more efficient. Because like what will end up happening is they'll end up researching on it. It'll make it so that they can take a compound and they can make something new to that compound that's better and more efficient, and then they'll patent it. And
that's what I'm saying. If they can patent it and they can make money off of it, then yes, you'll see it flourish. If it impacts the current revenue structure of any of these established industries, expect the pushback, which is there, which has kept it illegal this long.
Electric car for
exactly, how long? Right? Time and time again, you see this with all sorts of things. Again,
So why is weed legal?
Why is weed legal? I think they just came to the realization that you can't control it anymore.
Interesting.
And so that they would like to profit off of.
What pharmaceutical company? What pharmaceutical company is currently profiting off of THC?
I don't know.
None.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with that. What you're talking about is the zeitgeist. You're talking about society deciding that this needs to happen, and it moves it towards it, whether or not the market tells it to or not.
I think that, that does happen occasionally, and I'm glad it happened with weed, but I think more often than not, it kind of goes in the opposite.
How much do you think that took away from pharmaceuticals, though?
I think they would just find another way of
you're talking about,
it.
We'll take a lot more away.
So I would argue finding new avenues, new revenue streams is normal for pharmaceutical companies. So that they're a type of business that is structured to constantly be searching for the next thing. Because basically when they create something, most of the time that they're testing anything, it's not for a specific purpose. What they do is they test, and that thing has some sort of effect that they can market. So it's like, Viagra is their most profitable thing ever, and it was a heart medication. And it had this added benefit, and therefore that became their revenue stream. Like they're a very adaptable industry.
Yeah, I feel like they're
yes
like,
and no.
Masons, for Christ's sake, they'll always be around in some way.
That happened with that, but there's lots of times where they don't put the money into R&D that they claim they do. No,
of course not.
There have been very few new drugs that have come out over the last several decades. I think there's been no, if I'm not mistaken, there's been no new antibiotics in 50 years or something like that that have been developed. I hate to say it all comes down to profit. If it's not something that you can profit, penis pills you can profit on, right? So
you're selling mail-in security.
Yeah, exactly. But
I'm just saying, there's other than when Oxy changed their formula and they couldn't be crushed up anymore, and that whole company went out of business. Other than those types of cataclysmic things, that whole industry knows how to pivot. You know what I mean? It's just that they understand.
I'll give them that. They're always looking for a new revenue structure, a new way to
and
create profit.
That type of mentality creates longevity in hard situations. You know what I mean? It makes it so that your whole mentality as a business
So
is
you're
constantly
saying
pivoting.
When this happens, Big Pharma will just cope.
No, I'm thinking
They'll
that
just
they'll
take
have
the loss
You
and
think
move
they'll
on.
co-opt
No,
it?
I'm thinking.
I mean, if
I think they co-opt.
I'm thinking they'll go
co-opted
into
it.
entirely different areas of the world. I think it'll be like, we ran that good race here, and now all of a sudden that this is affecting us, we're putting it into this technology, which is far more promising, that there's nothing that can attack. You know what I mean? Like, I just think that their ability to constantly be pivoting has been impressive over the last 50 years. Ever since pills were, like, realistically, like, look at the history of pills. You know what I mean? Like, they've had massive tankings on lots of different types of prescription meds and then soared back up with something else. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. I just think that they would feel less threatened than I think we want to give it credit for. It's otherwise, like, if they are as big and bad as you'd think, weed wouldn't be legal here. And it wouldn't be getting legalized throughout the states. And it wouldn't just be so normal. And then we wouldn't have these new therapeutics. We wouldn't have this MDMA intervention therapy that's now been legalized. We wouldn't be giving that to one facility to produce. Like, that's another one of those things. Like, MDMA has this breakthrough therapy that it's been granted, that it allows it to progress forward in its research study way faster than it should. And in doing so, they've made it so that the association that's in charge of this research will be the sole provider of MDMA to the world. That means no industry can profit off of MDMA as its own substance, other than going through production from them.
From them, yeah.
Their facility.
I mean, now, to me, that could be problematic in later on down
Sure.
the road, because if anytime you have anybody that is basically granted a monopoly,
Depends what you mean by a
abuse of
monopoly,
power.
right? I mean,
Okay, yes, you could say that, and absolutely, it's certainly potentially. I'm just saying that when it comes from a place of, like, they're not trying to make profit. This is a not-for-profit organization, right? So immediately,
How
you're
many
starting
things
off
do you think start that way, though?
lots.
Right.
And how many things are used negatively within that sphere as well? You know what I mean? How much bad money is funneled through these organizations? How much misuse, miscarriaging of funds? How many, like, high-paid people are in jobs that they shouldn't be in, not-for-profits? It's crazy, yes. I'm just saying that, like, to have something start as the foundation of, like, we are going to try and make as much money off of this substance as possible, that's probably going to be more negative to the consumer immediately, in its immediacy. You know what I mean? But it would be my theory. It's the same reason that I thought weed was very interesting, because it's like, you know, back in the day, we've talked about this, an ounce of weed was $240, and now you can get an ounce of weed for $65. That's
Yeah.
better than the weed you would have gotten. So it's one of those, like, because it's
and without
not
the sketchy go
Yeah.
between too.
because it's a, you know, in terms of price for the consumer, it's something that isn't patentable. You just have to do a better product for cheaper, and then all of a sudden the market has the ability to kind of run with it.
But I mean,
it's
I think the thing with weed, though, is that there was an established market and the demand was there.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just a matter of scooping up the money.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas I think, like, and it you know, I come from a time of, I started smoking weed in the 90s.
before
right?
it was cool.
Well, no, it was hear me out, though. It was back on the cool thing by then.
Yeah.
Previous to that, in the 80s, it was like, it was so taboo,
Yeah.
right?
The Reagan era.
Right, the Reagan era. So, but I guess what I'm getting at with that is that it took a number of decades to get it to the point where the public looked at it and went, this isn't a big deal. Everybody does it. It's all good. How fast people are going to turn around on psychedelics and MDMA and things that have
got a
currently been
really,
demonized
really bad, like, horrible image right now.
Right?
Right?
No.
No, I mean, not as bad as it
No.
was, right?
Okay, ecstasy.
Not as bad as it was.
Ecstasy has a bad image.
Yep.
Molly
I like
has
the-
a bad
I
image.
like the word psilocybin.
Yeah,
That's
this
clean.
is where, like,
You need to get
so,
away from mushrooms.
So,
though.
Well, I mean,
think
that's
about this.
rebranding,
Like
but-
my parents just sent me. My parents sent me a news article on ketamine therapy,
yeah.
and I sent back to them. You know, this is angel dust, right? Like the thing that you guys were terrified of in the 90s, PCP and angel dust, and the thing that was going to make you murder your whole family. And now you're sending me a news article about how ketamine comes in a nasal spray and it really helps for depression. Because
Yeah.
they're using better language. around
Yeah,
it.
and I mean, like, it's possible to rebrand. I guess I'm just saying that it's going to take a little while, and yeah, I going back to your original point, I think it'll be a while before you see the impact on big pharma in the way that you're talking about.
I don't even know if you'll notice.
You know what I mean?
I just think that like they'll be able to pivot away. You would be able to look at the metrics and you'll be able to go, holy shit, that really affected them in this area. But my guess is they've pivoted to something else, as if they don't know what's going on. You know what I mean? Like if I were in that market, I would be immediately steering away. I would be thankful for the amount of money we've made in this particular industry.
I don't think anyone's thankful for anything like that, and it's always, what am I making tomorrow?
Yeah, but that's what I mean. It's like that was yesterday. Now all of a sudden this thing is dying because this is on its way. We need a new thing to pivot into.
Well, I mean, you see that in oil and gas. There are certain certain companies, if I'm not mistaken, like Exxon and whatnot, that are getting into more renewables and they're diversifying and they're seeing the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
But they've done it kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
And they've drug it out for many more decades than it should have been.
Well, I mean, like,
so
we watched Napster happen. You know what I mean? That was the dumbest thing I've ever seen an industry do. You know what I mean? The whole music industry was just like, no, you know what? CDs.
Yeah, they got caught completely with their pants down.
Who
They
wants
had
music
no
anytime for free?
Yeah.
That's really stupid. People want to go in and they really want to read those lyrics.
That's
Like,
the thing. They were clinging to an old established business model that worked for them very well for a long period of time. And even still, there are still people that cling to that business model today and refuse to see the
Same
writing
thing,
on the
buying
wall of
DVDs and VHS and all that shit.
So, but this is where I'm saying, like, an industry that's used to pivoting is not the music industry. It's something that they create a new platform and then they ride that out. You know what I mean? Until technology catches up and created a new platform. But it always had this physicality to it. And they never really had to pivot. It was just kind of like, we'll re-release in the new platform. Yeah. They had never thought that the idea that a platform would be taken away entirely. It was just like, this is what it is. And I think like the pharmaceutical industry right now is very reliant on the idea of pills just in general, because our culture loves the idea of taking a pill and for some reason our life being magic different.
What do you theorize they would go into next?
I would probably say, okay, I'm a futurist in those areas. So personally, I think they would be going into like the CRISPR realm, and I think it would getting into gene therapies, getting rid of chronic diseases and chronic illnesses. I think it'll be end of life type of things, so like longevities and things like that.
What they like about pills is they can keep selling.
Yeah,
them, right?
I disagree. I disagree with that because there is no money in cures. There's only money in
exactly.
Oh, it doesn't have to be a cure entirely. It can be something that takes
renewable?
many times.
See, I mean, I think realistically, like the whole idea of for-profit pharmaceutical and medical care, I mean, I think is inherently, it's always going to stagnate where the science could go and what could be done, because I think the technology is probably almost there now to where we could probably eradicate a lot of stuff and we could make things a lot better for people, but we choose not to because there's no financial motivation to do it.
How much money do you think Big Pharma has made over the last couple of years? For example?
The last 2 years have been the most profitable in ever.
Yeah. So you think they want to slow that down?
No.
Okay, but look at the way that
they've said they don't, and I mean, I won't get into all the details.
No, I don't want to talk too much about that.
But yes, there is an idea of you keep it rolling indefinitely, somewhat.
Well, okay, think about it this way: the
annual profits.
The whole mentality around this thing that we don't want to talk about is changing in the language of it. You know, it used to be like, okay, you're going to get this once when you're a teenager and it's for this thing and you're just kind of good. Now, like, our whole mentality around it is kind of is being shaped to renewal.
Yep.
Like, you need it. You need to keep re-upping.
That's why I'm saying, why would it be?
This is why, but this is what my argument is in terms of, like, just because they're moving in towards things that might not be pills, that doesn't necessarily mean that it won't be recurring.
If you don't get your CRISPR shot once a month, you won't have better hair, or you won't have the confidence you always wanted.
Yeah, or you'll have Huntington's again.
Yeah,
like you know what I mean. Like it's one of those
residual blindness.
We don't know what any of that stuff looks like.
We can fix your eyes, but you have to get this shot every month.
Yeah,
yeah, and you won't need.
You want to keep seeing
anymore. Yeah,
I mean, I think if you're doing that, you're not really looking at like CRISPR gene editing at that point,
but
because that's more.
I'm just saying that
a fix it kind of.
I'm just saying that there will be avenues that will be trodden down, and there will be things that they can have recurring revenue on. I don't think it's going to be limited to like, we're going to give you a magic shot and then all of a sudden you're good.
Right
Yeah.
now, I see them dragging their feet, like we were talking about the other industries earlier. This whole past couple of years is one hell of a temper tantrum. You are going to get your shit whether you like it or not, and you're going to pay us for it.
Yeah.
Like that's, and if you don't, you can't be part of society.
You know, it could have been if they had.
This couldn't be a better way of going against your argument, in my opinion.
What? How?
Because it's just they're going to ramp this up, not ramp it down.
Yeah. I'm saying though, as they're going to ramp up in an area that is profitable. There's an area that's going to be less profitable for them, and that is just going to happen over the next 10 years, guaranteed. Like I would put everything I have on that there will be a ramp down in that area.
It would never be that certain, but I mean, say we all do psychedelics, we all have this awakening, we're all more aware, right?
Okay.
And now we don't need all this mental health help that we currently need.
No, I just think that there is avenues. There will be different avenues in terms of how to approach it.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, pills sell less.
I mean, there's avenues now. I mean, realistically, I think my mental health I feel it's improved just by literally researching psychology.
Yeah.
It's taken some of the mystery away of certain things, some of the alienation of like, oh, I'm the only one that feels this way or whatever. It just knowledge and research is enough that you can kind of
knowledge
turn
is power.
I mean, and that's there now, right?
That being said, I think you had significant events that led you to open this.
Well, it did,
And that has to happen for a lot of people, or they never will.
The whole idea you got to hit rock bottom before you can start bouncing back and figuring things out. But people,
I don't know if you could get there when your basic needs are met on a daily basis.
Yeah, I mean, I think you do need to get down and see the bad side of things in order to appreciate the good things again. But what I'm getting at with that is some of these tools are there now. Psychedelics are there now. If you want them, you can get them. I mean, God, like again, I started doing drugs in the 90s. It was a lot harder to get weed then than it is now, even before it was legalized, right? Mm-hmm. You could do it though. Right, so just like you can do it now, you can get a hold of mushrooms. You can get I think for a lot of people though, it's just so many. And to circle this back to the very first thing we were talking about here, I don't know if it was on camera or not, but the idea that people aren't willing to change necessarily. They don't like the idea of altering their perception of the world and changing their mindset. So. Yeah. I think that's going to be more of the hurdle than having, because it's there already. Like the tools are there, the things are there if you want them, but getting people to do anything other, like it's like exercise, right? It's not magic. You know what I mean? If you want to get in shape and you want to get ripped, it's not magic. It really isn't. But people want something that makes it magic.
So the only reason I hold on to positivity in these ranges is because I was in a place of rigidity, and then I moved out of a place of rigidity. Mm-hmm. So if I can do it, anyone can do it.
True.
Is the
anyone can. I mean, anyone could, but most people won't. I guess is the thing.
I disagree with that pretty heavily. I think that different people have different competencies, and I think you're a very intelligent human being. Not everybody is able to change as easily as you are.
Sure, but
there are people like
I agree with that because there are people that are more naturally open to the idea of being open. I actually think it's a
dangerous thing to do to assume that anyone else can do the same thing that you can do.
Why?
Because you're putting such a high standard on people for you.
No, I'm putting so. What I'm looking at is I'm looking at it in terms of like a long-term projection, right? So like because I have an interest in things that are close to this realm, I stumbled upon it sooner than some other people. But if I did, and then someone else 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 did, all of a sudden it starts putting it more into the language around people. And what we are is usually an accumulation of the environment around us. We are every bit of advertising that we see during the day. We are what our friends talk about. We are what our parents listened to in the 80s. So what I'm saying is as language opens up around this type of stuff, the idea of people that won't change will have enough input information or enough language encountering them that they may open up at that point in time.
So what you're talking about is hitting
growth.
critical mass.
Critical mass, yeah.
Is
sure,
basically
that's
what
fair.
you're talking about.
Because it's just gradual growth, right? Like,
Well,
yeah,
and
sure,
I mean, yes,
where I'm at is different than...
That's possible, but I think there are certain things, like certain people are going to be more likely to go down that road than others, and it's just throughout history, like, again, like, trying to figure myself out has allowed me to see things in other people that I didn't see before, right? And what their limit, like when you say everyone has the capability and the potential, I would agree with you. Yes, that is possible, but there are some people have a clearer path to that endpoint than others, right? I would argue your path mentally was clearer than some others. Mine is clearer than some others. There are other people that you could potentially get there, but there are so many more hurdles in the, like, personality-wise, just from their, the nature versus nurture. The nature of them is set a certain way. The nurture has compounded that in other ways that makes it more difficult to allow that information
it's like
in.
the great cartoon of all these animals standing around, the giraffe's eating berries off this tall tree, and everyone else can't fucking eat.
Yeah,
okay.
I guess I've kind of accepted the idea.
There are limitations have.
More
So-
recently that there are certain things that some people are going to be able to do very naturally and other people are just not going to have, and not to get upset that they can or cannot, but it's just, don't get mad that, I can't get mad at my cat for jumping up on the counter and eating off the counter if I let him, right?
There are people that I can't trust to do certain jobs at work. They just never will be able to do that.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I don't want to get mad at
Just-
them for failing at it.
Just take it a little bit more simply, okay? What's the #1 car brand in the world?
One car brand?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Tesla.
Okay.
Most profitable
Okay.
currently.
Okay.
What was electric cars in 2007? The dumbest thing you've ever heard of. It was a failure of an idea.
To me, in 2007, it was an idea that was buried.
Yeah.
Sure.
That I
Okay.
was
An idea that was buried in
But
the 90s.
sociologically, like in
what I know
society, an electric car was a stupid idea. It was dumb. It was nerdy. It looked like shit.
Well, I mean,
and now it's the #1 car brand in the world.
I would agree that I would argue that there was a very strategic and concerted effort to make the electric car seem that way, and
Sure.
then to.
And
so
there's
again, it was
a
the
conceded
marketing.
effort to lower psychedelic use.
Yeah.
War on drugs is far more aggressive than the war on the electric car.
Yeah.
So
totally.
like,
and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And I get it. And just
but
like
this
the
is what I'm
electric
saying.
car
Like,
came
if
around
you
eventually.
think that everybody will always think the way that they think, you're wrong.
No, I'm not saying that everybody will always. I'm just saying that I think the progression of people it doesn't move at the same pace for
It doesn't matter the
everyone,
pace.
right?
I'm just looking at it
So-
as in terms like when I say I'll bet everything on it. The reason is because I'm looking at it as an eventuality. It's not that it's just like, oh yeah, tomorrow. Obviously tomorrow, no. But in 10 years, with the slow crawl of information that seems to creep out and the way that our whole society changes,
I would never put money on people getting better. I'd put money on things around us that we use getting better.
Yeah.
But
Same.
I don't buy humans getting better on
Well, I mean, we're the
fraud.
same
I think-
creatures we were thousands of years ago. Like reading through like some of the Marcus Aurelius stuff that I've been reading, right?
Yeah, we're just an animal.
I mean, that's over 2,000 years ago, and it's so applicable in some ways to like our mental condition today. It really hasn't changed so much.
Yeah.
It's just like our surroundings, our technology, or some of the details have changed, but the overarching.
It's strangely similar.
Our mentality has not changed so much since the days that we were running through the woods spearing deers and you know what I mean, like we think we've come so far, but we really haven't.
We just
come
have
as far as
stuff.
what
Our
we
stuff
think.
has come
That's
far.
what
Yeah, our
I'm saying. I
stuff
would
has
always
come
bank
quite
on
a
our
ways.
stuff to get better, but I don't know if we're getting better.
But that's the thing, like, because we're still grappling with the same issues of morality and existentialism and whatnot that we've been dealing with, like, since, from what I can tell, the beginning of
I
time,
think
and
the
we've
only
come
way to get
not
away
that
from
much
that
closer
is to
to.
extend our lifespan. Honestly,
I mean,
because
yeah, maybe
I
if you had a
think
longer chunk of time to
Yeah,
see it, you'd have a longer time to reflect.
I
than
honestly
you'd have.
think that's
That's
it.
very
I think
fair.
if we were to be able to live longer lives, we would maybe be able to get through that and advance. But I don't think in the shortness of a life, we can see and mature enough.
So there you go. Big Pharma will keep us alive longer.
Well, I
That'll
mean,
be their next avenue.
they're experimenting on dogs. They're trying to double the lifespan of dogs right now.
Sweet. I would love it if my dog lived as
Now,
long as I
that
did.
being said, that podcast I listened to, a guy who's working on that, was 2 years ago, so I don't know where that is right now, but they were trying to get dogs like that would live to be 15 to be able to live to be 30.
Sweet.
So then if it could work on dogs, then they could potentially roll that out on bigger mammals. And,
Yeah.
Yeah, so they are working on stuff like that.
Well, that's another thing that CRISPR would be able to help us with.
But then
It's
we're
the
going to
way
have
that
a
our-
whole other slew of problems.
Oh,
There's gonna be-
yeah.
There's going to be... We may get
Well,
past some
yeah.
of the problems that we were talking about earlier about how we haven't really grown much as people
Yeah.
throughout thousands of years. But if we get into living for 200, 300, 400 years, we're going to be dealing
Some
with
angry people.
all new growing pains.
Well, I mean that's true, but I think that might also push us towards
Well,
like the idea that we need to. I mean, this is going off into all sorts of other stuff now, but getting into the sci-fi. But I think that if you have a, as a species, if we can live for hundreds of years, I think that would kind of give us more of a push to maybe for some of us
Make
to
a
jump
better
off
life?
of the, well to.
Climb over that ice
Imagine-
wall.
Well, I was going to
Imagine
say get
doing a
out into
job
the
you
stars
hate
and go
going-
off to
It's
other
okay.
places, right?
It's okay because one day I'll die, so I can do this for a while. But what all of a sudden if you're a dishwasher for your whole life, right? And then all of a sudden your whole life is 800 years? It's
I
like,
was a dishwasher for 600
I don't
years.
know if I want to do that for that long.
Actually, though, what you're saying there, I might argue might have the opposite effect in some ways because I think the shortness of life, sometimes when you realize that there is a limitation to it,
a fair point.
which is where I've come to is going,
Yeah.
okay, I just
I'm
turned
running out of
38.
time.
I don't have that much. I mean, sure, I've got time left, but I don't. I mean, my dad popped at 47, right? So by that, I got 9
Well,
years.
our
to-
fathers aren't great examples.
No,
of-
they're not great examples at all. But what I'm saying though is it puts something in your head that goes,
Perspective.
okay, time's ticking. I can't just dick around for to get what I want out of being on this rock for the time that I'm here. I need to work a little harder and a little faster to get there because eventually there's an end point. If there was no real end point, you might see people that are more willing to meander through life a little longer potentially before getting to that point, which they may get to that point, but you may see it as opposed to when you're getting ready to turn 40, it might be, by the time you get about to be 250, you start to wisen up.
Your
and
midlife
really,
crisis.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, so but then you're still just dealing with the same human issues, just extended out longer.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to say what would happen. if
Different
Well, and how
timescale.
fast does a year pass when you're living 500 of them?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, all of a sudden it's like a week, right? So you don't really care that I took this year off and I laid around and played
took a
video
year
games and just what I mean, I got another 700 and some left, so I don't whatever, right? Like I'll make it up in the
What'd you do after high school? I took a decade off.
Yeah, I took a decade off.
I
to
took a
reevaluate
century to hang around.
Yeah.
Well, all of
and
a sudden,
just
high school
Find
lasts-
myself.
find myself.
Like, how
and
long
then-
would school last in a
Right?
life that long? Couple hundred years, probably.
So like
Just
you said, I mean
download the information into my
causes-
chip.
You get certain solutions to some problems and you create other
You're creating all kinds of, new
of other-
existential problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we're ready to grapple with that.
Well,
We ain't.
yeah, I mean, it all comes down to whether you're willing to dig deep into yourself or not. And I think whether you have 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years to do it, if you're not willing to do it, you're not willing to do it. And it doesn't matter how long you have to be around, right? So